Happy Halloween, Conrad.
Happy Halloween, Guy.
I feel like it's a tradition that we do these Halloween episodes with our masks on. You're wearing a very interesting costume this year.
I am.
You have a visor and some hair, and there's something on your ear. What are you dressed as?
I think, regardless of your political persuasion, this is the scariest Halloween season we have coming up. I like to go every 4 years as a political character.
What are you?
I'm the scariest thing that might happen to the United States. How's that?
I see. I gotcha.
Ha.
All right.
And
I gotta take
and
my helmet off because I can't see anything or
you can't
even
see anything in
tell.
your voice. You
No.
sound like you're in a box. So for those of you listening, Guy just took off his, I think I made it the Star Wars reference correct, his Boba Fett helmet.
Yes, look at you. Pop culture reference. My son's Boba Fett.
Little pop culture
Helmet.
for you and a little political culture. I have to take this off because I will probably catch on fire if I don't. There we go. Now it's the real you and me. Good to see you.
Great to see you. And we are here with a special bonus episode to Kiss Up to Clio.
We are kissing up to Clio. In fact, I think we talked about this last podcast. We're doing a bonus episode of the Clio Legal Trends Report. And we talked about whether or not this looked like we are just kissing up and prostituting ourselves to Clio, which we are not. And the reason we decided we are not doing that is because we would cover this anyway. This is really important
And we
stuff.
have. We did. We covered it when they weren't a sponsor. We'll cover it after they pull their sponsorship after this episode. And this is one of the leading industry reports.
People are saying this
And-
is the biggest industry report. It's better than Lying Larry Report's Rocket Matter report. This is the best report I have ever seen.
This is the most beautiful report that we could ever imagine. But seriously, you know, you can just go see what I post about this. This is like you can write your entire marketing plan. You download all the Clio Legal Trends reports and you go through them, or maybe you upload them into ChatGPT and have them summarize them for you. But you know, they cover a lot, and I referenced the 2019 report, and I'm super grateful. You know, I gave them feedback over and over again. I'm like, you got to bring marketing back, and Clio listened, and I had the opportunity to hop on a call with some of the folks that put together the Clio Legal Trends report, and they're committed to making this one of the best resources, and those we'll dive into today. Like, this is a really valuable thing for folks, and Clio puts together the research, and it's free.
Music.
Welcome to Lunch Hour Legal Marketing, teaching you how to promote, market, and make fat stacks for your legal practice. Here on Legal Talk Network.
All right, everybody, welcome to this bonus edition of Lunch Hour Legal Marketing. This is a very special episode because I think it is going to provide you with context about your own firm. One of the things that we really like to do at Mockingbird is to provide benchmarking numbers. And I've always said data without context is just numbers. So you can start thinking about how you perform relative to what everyone else said to the people at Clio. Now, Guy, this was I think one of the important things, we touched on this the other day. One of the important things when looking at data is to cite your sources. There is too much bullshit data being spouted out, picked out of the air by marketing experts who are just trying to make themselves look good. So it was nice of us to see the data from which the Clio Legal Trends Report. Can you give a quick overview of where this data comes from? Because I think that is very relevant to the rest of the conversation.
Sure. So some of it is Clio user data. Some of it is independent research that Clio hired an independent research company to perform. You know, and again, like I said, I'm appreciative that they include some of that. I'm for full transparency of the data. I feel like if we're going to have industry reports, you got to release the underlying data. And I know that there's proprietary and we paid for this and all that kind of stuff, but To me, if you want to go scientific, it's got to be subject to the data has to be subject to review.
But I wouldn't question the integrity of this data, right?
No, I'm not questioning it at all. I mean, again,
Okay.
I think that they've articulated how they conducted this research. I was just saying, maybe I'm asking too much, but I would say go one step further and just make the data available for download.
All right. So, Guy, the report starts off, not surprisingly, with a long conversation about AI. Any interesting data points for you? And by the way, dear listener, we are going to encourage you to download this yourself. But the next, 30 minutes or so, Guy and I are going to pull out the nuggets that we found interesting from both the technology and marketing perspective. There's a lot of other stuff in there, so don't take this as canon. We're cherry picking the things that we care about because we care about them.
All right, and Guy, again, I would say go download the other years. I mean, especially 2019. So don't think that this is like the end all be all on the report, of course. So the big headline here, and they even kick off with talking about the 2023 Goldman Sachs study talking about 44% of work tasks and legals could be automated by AI. AI is on everybody's mind. The headline, I think, in this context is lawyers have been quick to adopt AI, which is counter to how they've been on tech adoption in the past. And as we'll get into, and Clio's data supports also that AI could automate nearly 75% of hourly billable work in law firms. So the big headlines are lawyers are adopting AI. All the powers that be seem to think that most of the current billable legal work is doable through AI. And so, okay, well, what does that mean for us? It means you should have a bunch more time on your hands to be able to do the things that the robots cannot do. And ironically, as we'll discuss, to me, some of that means business development and marketing. And that's great. It frees up time for you to focus on growth. And ironically, a lot of the lawyers, respondents to this survey said that they think that, generative AI can actually replace generating marketing content. We'll dive into. So anyway, headlines, AI is being adopted. They see great opportunity to reduce the amount of time that you're spending doing billable work. What does that mean for you as a lawyer?
So you said something that I jumped into and I noted as well when I was reading this. You mentioned how it is atypical. And I think even in the report, the word surprisingly, I think the sentence was surprisingly lawyers are quick to adopt AI. I think this goes counter to the narrative that lawyers are fearful tech Luddites. And I've never really felt that way, right? And there's a lot. I think this is much more reflective of the reality than the narrative. That the legal industry really is pushing things and finding ways to do things better, and that is going to continue forward.
Yeah, part of that narrative though is not. It's fine. Is not just their their resistance to tech. It usually comes with ethical concern, right? Like the big thing with the resistance to cloud was my client stuff's going to get hacked, right? It's not secure and blah, 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 which is ironic because at the time, lawyers
much better
were leaving their files out. Yeah. right. But, with AI, to me, like there's been some discussion of some of those ethical issues and they're real. And I think that's one of the things the platforms like Clio are talking about is like, this is one of the reasons why deploying generative AI in a self-contained platform is a better way to do it. Although I think some of the data shows that most people are using ChatGPT, but this is an extremely accessible technology. It's almost like having a search engine in some ways. It's like a conversational search engine. And if you want to think about it like that, whereas like some of the other tech that we've been resistant to, it's not, it's a little, cloud is a little more ethereal at the time. Like this is feels very much like, I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay. All right. Let's get into some of the numbers, Guy. We promised to read out some of the numbers. What were some of the things that you found interesting?
Well, with lawyers with all this extra time that they should be getting from automation should be able to now start responding to emails and answering the phone because according to the survey, according to the report, in 2024, 67% of law firms did not respond to the emails at all, which is actually worse It's about, I think it's about, if you do the math, it's about 12% worse with that they did in 2019 when it was at 60%. So less people responding to emails. Now again, I posted this on LinkedIn and some people responded like, well, hey, how are these emails being sent? And it's like, they're being sent by an independent research company whose job is to try to send these emails. So it's not like they can't, it wasn't like Clio. It was like, hey, marketing at Clio.com, please respond to our email. This was like, from the experience, as I understand it, was very much like the experience of like a potential client contacting you or a client contacting you.
And that's what they were trying to measure. So the funny thing is, we're talking about automation, Clio Grow. The data source on this survey, there were roughly 1,000 legal professionals that they talked to, which included lawyers and paralegals and the like that they surveyed. And there were 1,400 Clio contact, right? So you've got a survey set of 2,500. I don't know who that independent researching firm actually reached out to. I don't know that it was Clio users. I don't know that it wasn't, but we're talking about automation. Like, there is zero excuse for that number. Even if the response is, we've received your email and we'll be getting back to you shortly.
Yeah, and again, if we were like, let's just say we were at like 50% even. This is worse than half of the law firms are answering emails at all. I mean, that's staggering to me.
Yeah.
Which brings you back to, you start asking questions like, talk to me about how the data was collected, because it's just like, how is this possible?
Yeah. Yeah.
But guess what? Phone is even worse.
So the phone number was absolutely staggering. In fact, what I would recommend, if you, all right, share the phone data.
Percentage of law firms that answered our phone calls,
or phoned us back, or phoned us back,
or even bothered to phone us back at all. It's not 2019. 73%. And I remember, I bet you if you go back and listen to our prior conversation, we were like, this is unbelievable that 73% of the phone calls are going unanswered. Like, you have to fix this. There's huge opportunities missed. Well, guess what it is in 2024? 52%. Only half answered or phoned back.
And of the answered, the actual data point is 40%. 40% of phone calls were answered.
What is going on? Something's wrong. Was the phone down that day? Was there a national phone outage when they were conducting this data research?
This is so bad. It's so bad it does call into question. Now, I'm going to put myself in your shoes, dear listener, and what I don't want you to do is to say, hey, it's 40% answer the phone. We're better than that, so I don't need to worry, right? Well, I know we answer more than 40%. You're probably right. But what I bet you don't know is, what is your actual answer rate? What is your number? And I've said this is probably the 10th time I've made this same point. If you don't know what your phone call answer rate is, it is probably worse than you think it is. If you do know what it is, it will be above average and it will annoy you. I know across our clients, our phone call answer rate is about 93%. Okay. And that's across all of our clients. The ones who are really doing a great job are closer to 98%, right? So the high volume shops that have this really nailed down are in the 97 to 98% range. If you think you're answering 100% of your phone calls because you're using a third-party answering service, I 100% know that you have never tested your third-party answering service, because
so you're blowing these numbers out of the water.
Well,
right?
So I mean, part of this becomes like a sample size question, right? You and I both work with firms who are aggressively marketing. You and I are both working with firms who are investing a whole bunch of money in pay-per-click and SEO.
Hold on a second. Not all of those clients that are at 93% now came to you at 93% either.
Right. I mean, we find the outliers, and
right.
if that
and
is
you're helping
if
to
that is
improve
where
them
you suck the most, you're going to hear about us. Hear about it from us. So we're working to move. I suspect, I don't know this, but well, based on what we're looking at here, we're well above average. But my point being, know what your phone call answer rate is, and know it empirically, not because you think, right? We're really good at this, and so we answer it all the time, because you don't. If you don't know the actual number, you perform really poorly. So that was
good news. Here's the good news.
You want to find the good news? You can all improve.
Yeah. It's even better. This is actually a very cynical, bad thing to be saying, but
wow,
it doesn't matter whether you answer the phone or not, because of the firms who actually answered the phone. So this is the few people that actually bothered to answer the phone.
Okay.
Clio, or the research, asked, what would you like to have answered, and what was actually talked about?
Okay.
Did the firm provide clear next steps? Did the firm reference similar legal situations that they had experience with? Did the firm provide any rate or information or overall cost? That's another big section in here that people should download this to check out, because we're not going deep on pricing. There's all sorts of stuff about pricing and pricing transparency, and you should be on it. And I know that a lot of lawyers that are listening to this right now are like, I roll on pricing and price transparency, but change is coming. In the event, people that answered the phone in 2019, only about 30% were giving next steps. 2024, 18%. In terms of referencing similar situations, my experience, 2019, 27%. That's down to 2%. Only 2% of the firms who answered the phone made any reference to similar legal situations. Now, again, we can be critical and be like, well, maybe it was misinterpreted and blah, blah, blah. But it was bad in 2019. This is saying it's basically not happening. And firms that provide rate information overall cost, 27% in 2019, down to 18%. So less firms as a percentage of respondents are sharing rate information and overall cost information than they were in 2019.
Okay. So now we're getting people to answer the phone. One of the things I really liked out of the report was they focus on tactics that people can use to improve conversion rate.
Right.
And I really liked these changes in conversion rate. These are things that you can do at a small level. They all add up. And the concept was being able to do e-signatures, right? Doing online scheduling, text messaging, for example. All of those firms that were using those had higher conversion rates. And they actually found that e-signatures, and this isn't a shocking concept, if you enable e-signatures, your conversion rate overall is 10% higher than if you don't, which makes sense. You're just making it easier. But think about how dramatic effect that could have on your business if you just enable that one very specific piece of technology to improve your overall conversion rate. That I find, that's off of page 99, which I really, really thought was useful and tactical for law firms.
Totally. A lot of the intake folks, not great for everybody's practice, great for every practice area, but certainly in the context of PI, it's get them signed up, meet some basic criteria, but get them signed up and then investigate the claim and do a turn down. But the getting the signed up, that's what changes a lot of these businesses, because they get them, they're indexing so high on conversion to actual clients. And then when there's no case, or there's not one they're going to represent, it's a turn down. Now, some lawyers don't like that. They don't like the sign up first. And so again, but that's the place to attack it. It's to attack it in conversion, to attack it in intake, to attack it in the tech things that you can make it more frictionless also on payments, right? Take the friction away.
Take the friction away. And one of the other things on that conversion side that we talked about and turning into clients, and I love that they did this. This is the following set of pages, page 100 and 101. You and I, Guy, have talked about funnel velocity, and which means the faster that you purchase, the faster that you make a decision about purchasing something, the more likely you are to purchase that thing. The example I always use is cars, right? Car salespeople are taught to not let you off the lot until you bought the new Ford Bronco, right? because when you go home, you have to think about it, you research, you talk to your spouse, you talk to the bank, blah, blah, blah. But if they can get you to buy then, you're more likely to buy. So one of the things that was fascinating in this, they call it difference in time to hire. E-signatures, the percent difference between those using and not using each feature out of Clio Grow. If you're using e-signatures out of Clio Grow, 24% higher. Those are converted 24% faster. Online schedule 7% faster. Online intake forms 8% faster. The interesting thing that they added in here, and this is a bit of a Clio pitch because you can get ads directly through Clio, but online search ads, this I found really fascinating outside of the context of Clio. They were finding that the time to hire is 25% shorter from that digital marketing channel, which was interesting, but it actually makes sense because
it's not surprising.
You and I know that when people are looking to buy a thing, pay-per-click is something there's been studies on, you're more likely to click on the pay-per-click ad than a research phase where you're more likely to go to organic and not believe what you're reading in the pay-per-click ads. But if you're interested in buying some peanut butter, you're more likely to click on the peanut butter ad, which is fascinating to me that it's showing up as 25% faster at turning into a client, right? And so
yeah. Well, guys, that doesn't surprise me at all. This is bottom of the funnel, non-brand, in my opinion, for the most part. They're obviously not segmenting brand, non-brand.
100%. So,
but that's going to be fast, right? Those are the people. That's bottom of the funnel, direct response.
They need it,
performance
right?
marketing. That's why what do we always say? If you need it fast, you got to do ads.
100%. And I think the subtext behind this that I like to remind people of is not all of your marketing channels perform and convert at the same way. If you need 100 more leads, if you think you need 100 more leads to get to your marketing objectives, those 100 more leads could actually be 50 pay-per-click leads or 150 SEO leads, right? And those channels perform fundamentally different. The conversion rate by channel changes. The conversion rate by intake, we call it intake type, phone call, form fill, text, or chat, changes. It is fundamentally different, and I think we tend to believe it's all the same. Go ahead.
Yeah, to me, all that matters is you do the opposite. You say,
right,
what cost per client works for my firm? Okay, now let's go figure out what channels we can play in because the cost per client. So again, we're like, ads are fast. Guess what? You pay a premium,
right?
And so that's the thing that I think that's. I was just talking about this earlier, but so many people think about like, let's deploy resources across all these different channels. And it's like, no, you should only be deploying against the ones that you have some reasonable hypothesis are going to work for the economics of your firm. That's the problem is like, you'll ask a firm, like, what's your target cost per client? And they'll be like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. It's like, how much would you like to pay for your revenue? Right. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. And then again,
imagine ordering at a menu.
I want to focus.
Yeah.
I want to stay on the legal trends report and not go down these.
All right, more data,
rabbit holes. Yeah, more data.
What else do you like? Pull me some gems out of here. Well,
not surprisingly, shoppers are unlikely to promote law firms. So they provide some awesome data about the lack of response increases the likelihood of detractors, and no phone response, you're at 90% detractors. And again, anecdotally, we know this because we see negative reviews. Didn't respond to my calls. It's like, it's right here. This is the impact of your failed responses. And so anyway, the point is, because again, lawyers, we say at the beginning of this, they're like either rolling their eyes about the response rates on emails, they're rolling their eyes about the response rates on phones, they're questioning the data and all this kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, we know that unless you can answer Conrad's question of what the hit rate is, your answer rate on phone calls is, you don't know. And it's probably closer to these numbers than it is to Conrad.
What did you find surprising, interesting, or noteworthy, Guy, about their marketing data?
Well, so at the outset, they talk about that 23% of legal professionals believe that AI is going to improve the client experience or satisfaction. 22% that it's going to increase the firm's revenue, right? AI is going to increase the firm's revenue. 19% helped me grow my business. So those are kind of like the headline marketing AI topics. And then you get a little further down, and we mentioned this earlier, I think it's like 87% believe that AI can generate marketing content. Now, I'm like, look, can AI help you generate content? Of course, there's lots of different ways to use it. But what I'm seeing a lot in the marketplace right now is lawyers that are wholesale copying and pasting Chat GPT output into blog posts and social posts. And so when I see this data, I'm like, yeah, that's what I think is actually going on. And I think as this episode is released, and maybe we'll talk about this more in a future episode, the FTC's rule on fake reviews just went live in terms of accountability for compliance. And this, to me, like, you're pasting Chat GPT stuff and claiming that you wrote it, certainly seems like false and misleading, and definitely seems like fake social indicators, which are expressly not permitted under the FTC rules. Now, will any of that get enforced? Probably not, sadly. A couple people might get made example of, but the Legal Trends Report data really shows, like, and look at the other one that got me was growth rates for law firm spending since 2012. Software spending is growing at 3 times the rate as marketing spending. And go ahead.
No, so the marketing spend I found really fascinating. We've often talked about how much should you spend on marketing, and our answer has always been it depends on how aggressively you want to grow. Interestingly, the data point from the Clio Legal Trends Report is that firms are spending 5% of their revenue on marketing.
That's so low.
It's fine if you don't want to grow, right? So, like, again. No, it is, but and some people don't want to grow, and that's totally fine. Like,
that is,
I think we have this false god of growth, right? And sometimes, like, I don't necessarily want to be the biggest agency. I want to be the best agency, and there's lots of constraints.
I think you need a basic. There's, like, we'll call it the basal market level in order not to grow, but just to prevent you from dying on the vine, where you're like. Some firms are like, I'm just going to do good work and wait for referrals to come. And they, and great. And if you're doing that and you've got a very strong pipeline of referral sources, more power to you. But even that should be nurtured, and you should be investing in those referral relationships, which means you're spending some amount of money. And so I'm like, if you're just spending zero, like, there is no investment in and I'm going to use marketing as the function. It's a marketing function. It's not just a risk of not growing. It's a risk of contracting and going out of business.
So it's interesting. This is the same data set that said 74% of people, of the lawyers, market through their company website, right? And so you don't have a company website. You're only spending 5% on marketing. This is an average figure. I wonder what the median was. I'm wondering if this average gets brought down by a bunch of zeros. That very much could be the case.
And the other thing, the other issue with the data is, this is the question: what are they counting in there? Like, so lawyers classically, they take people out for dinner, they're going to conferences, they're speaking events, like all of this referral relationship building stuff.
Right.
They don't count that as marketing. So it's not in their P&L. It's not tagged marketing expense. And so they would say, I don't spend anything on marketing. And I'm like, these referrals relationships that you're nurturing, they're not free.
Yeah.
And I don't know that this data reflects that.
Well, it does. It breaks it out. There is, interestingly, a 31% client attended conferences or trade shows. That seems really high for a data set that also only 3 out of 4 of the people have a website. Right? That seems very interesting. Backwards, not what I would expect. 75%, it does break this out, 75% are marketing their services through referrals, which is totally fair and not super surprising. I would look at, this is on page 119, how people are spending money on their work. One of the things I found interesting, you know what's bigger than SEO? Social media, baby. Social
Totally.
media has eclipsed, at least in terms of participation, spending,
Well,
and it. Go ahead.
Well, this
Tell me.
is my issue with this. So again,
Okay.
I'm grateful that Clio included me in the feedback process and then responded to it. But this is how our lawyers marketing their services, not how our potential clients looking for lawyers.
Okay. Yeah.
It's less helpful. It's less valuable to know what lawyers are doing, because by the way, a lot of them are doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. It's much more valuable to know what are legal services consumers doing to find and make decisions on lawyers. And then let's compare that to how lawyers are marketing their services, and let's see the gap there.
So this is an interesting data point that you're bringing up there, Guy. And we talked, I think, last session. We at least talked in the preamble. We may not have recorded this. There was a data point that I called into question that it said this was something I heard at a conference. 66% of phone calls are generated by organic search. And
that doesn't even have any meaning.
I called utter bullshit on that because without and the reason I called bullshit on that is without the context of what everyone of other firms, that may sound achievable. It certainly doesn't line up with what you're seeing here in terms of where firms are spending. But that seemed crazy. And this is why, and I hate to plug Bedlam, but we will be talking about the benchmarks.
Do you hate it? Do you hate it?
I know. I can hear Adam snickering in the background. But without those benchmarks, without understanding where the rest of your competitive set sits on that, you may swallow a piece of data like that and just take it for at face value.
Yeah, and again, here's my thing about it. Just give me the data. Give me the underlying data. Maybe it's true of this data set, but how many firms is this based on? What are the other things that they're doing? It's maybe it is true that there's 67% of the phone calls for this data set were generated by organic. That could be true.
That could only be true for a firm that was only marketing digitally through organic.
Or mostly, right?
Right. And had no brand.
Yeah.
Interestingly, 9%. So solos were spending 9% of their revenue on marketing, whereas the average firm was spending 5%. So almost double. Why do you think that is, Guy?
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Okay.
Why do you think it is?
I think it is because I think it is a change in the denominator, not the numerator. Meaning, you solos are struggling to generate revenue, and you have a smaller denominator to think about percentage of marketing to revenue. Which means I think you're spending a lot of money foolishly and with wasted time.
That could be
channels
true.
That will never return. And if you're not answering the phone 52% of the time, all of your pay-per-click advertising is twice as expensive. Your cost per client is twice as expensive as it needs to be if you're running pay-per-click, for example.
Yeah, and again, I think we don't have enough detail in the data, but to me, the solos are spending at a more appropriate spend level as a total percentage of revenue on marketing. Again, I think 9-10% is not that aggressive growth target. And, even the Small Business Administration, I think, recommends like 10 to 12 or something. And so it's those other firms that are very undercapitalized. My question is, why are they so undercapitalized? Is it because they're spending it on software now and other stuff? But that's the thing that doesn't make sense to me.
I mean, I think you and I probably exist in this growth orientation, right? Because that's what we do. We're the fertilizer of law firms. We're the growth engine of law firms. And there may just be a bunch of law firms that don't care about that.
No, for sure there are. And that's why, too, again, I'm like, it's like we got to be talking apples to apples. Are they considering all of the business development resources that they deploy in the marketing bucket? That's the part that I'm like, I'm curious about. Okay. Anyway, again, the headlines here are, they give you the blueprint of what people are looking for. They show you the blind spots that law firms have. Like go first, go manage these things at your firm.
Yeah.
Go look at your numbers, compare them with the benchmarks, and we statistically, you're going to find that you've got some blind spots that you can improve upon that can have big impacts on your business.
So download the Clio Legal Trends Report. Not that we are a shill for Clio, and we're not doing this just because they're a sponsor of the show. This will put you in a great place to understand where you fit, things that you're not even thinking about, numbers that you have never considered. It's a good reset. It's a good reset, and it's why we cover this every time it comes out.
Download them all.